I came home a war hero, but my wife wasn't who I thought she was. She wasn't a wife at all. She was an employee, and I was her target.
Let me take you back to where this nightmare began. Not in the desert where I dodged bullets, but in a sterile office building in Northern Virginia, where I made the mistake of having a conscience. My name is Jake Morrison. Before I became a soldier again, I was something else entirely. An aerospace engineer. A damn good one, too. For 6 years, I worked for Eterna Solutions, one of the biggest defense contractors in the country. Billion-dollar contracts, cutting-edge technology, the kind of work that made you feel like you were serving your country without ever putting on a uniform. I was lead engineer on Project Sentinel, a next-generation autonomous drone navigation system. This wasn't some hobbyist quadcopter. These were million-dollar combat drones designed to operate independently in hostile territory, identifying targets, making split-second decisions, the future of warfare. And I discovered it was fatally broken. It was a Tuesday morning, 3 years ago. I was running our 100th simulated combat scenario when I saw it. A glitch in the targeting algorithm. At first, I thought it was a one-off error. But when I dug deeper, when I ran the test again and again, the pattern became undeniable. Under specific conditions, electromagnetic interference, certain weather patterns, specific altitudes, the drone's IFF system would malfunction. IFF, Identify Friend or Foe, the most critical safety feature in any autonomous weapon system. When it glitched, the drone would do the unthinkable. It would classify friendly units as enemy combatants. I sat there, staring at my screen, watching the simulation play out. Blue dots, our troops, turning red. Target acquired, weapons hot. Friendly fire incident. Casualties, 12 KIA, 8 WIA. It was just a simulation. But if we deployed this system as scheduled, it wouldn't be simulation anymore. It would be real soldiers, real blood, real families getting that knock on the door. My hands were shaking when I compiled my report. I documented everything, the code flaw, the test results, the potential casualty projections. I sent it up the chain to my department head, Richard Castellano.
2 days later, I was called into a conference room on the executive floor. Richard was there. So was the VP of Defense Systems, Marcus Webb. So was a man I didn't recognize. Tailored suit, cold eyes, no name tag. "Jake," Marcus said, his voice warm but his eyes weren't. "We've reviewed your findings. We appreciate your diligence, but there's a larger picture here you need to understand." The unnamed man spoke next. His voice was flat, businesslike. Project Sentinel is 18 months from full deployment. We have contracts with the Air Force worth $2.3 billion. If we halt production now to fix this code issue, we're looking at a complete system redesign, minimum 2 years. Eterna would lose the contract. The company would lose half its workforce, including you. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. People could die. "The scenario you've identified," Richard cut in, "requires a highly specific set of circumstances. The probability of all those factors aligning in a real combat situation is statistically negligible." Negligible? My voice was rising despite myself. "We're talking about a weapon system that could kill our own troops. There's no acceptable margin of error for that." The unnamed man leaned forward. "Mr. Morrison, you're young, idealistic. Those are admirable qualities. But this is the real world. Defense contracting is about acceptable risk. Every system has flaws, every technology has limitations. What you found is a theoretical edge case. It's not theoretical, I said, my jaw clenched. I've replicated it dozens of times. Richard sighed like he was dealing with a stubborn child. Jake, we're asking you to be a team player here. Bury this report. We'll add it to a long-term improvement list. Generation 2 of the system will address it. But right now, this information stays in this room. Are we clear? I looked at each of their faces. Richard, who'd mentored me for 6 years, wouldn't meet my eyes. Marcus had the expression of a man who'd already moved on to his next meeting. The unnamed man was watching me like a scientist observing a lab rat. No, I said quietly, we're not clear. I walked out of that room knowing my career at Eterna was over, but I didn't know how far they would go to destroy me.
I didn't go home that night. I went straight to a coffee shop 3 blocks from the office, opened my laptop, and did what they'd told me not to do. I contacted the Department of Defense Inspector General's office. Within a week, I was sitting across from 2 DoD auditors and a JAG attorney, walking them through every line of corrupted code, every failed simulation, every internal email where Eterna executives discussed managing the risk profile. The investigation took 4 months. 4 months of being followed in parking garages, 4 months of late-night hang-up calls, 4 months of former colleagues crossing the street to avoid me. My apartment was broken into twice. Nothing stolen, just moved. A message, we can reach you. But I had copies of everything. Multiple backups, cloud storage they didn't know about. When the hammer finally dropped, it was devastating. The DoD canceled the $2.3 billion contract. Eterna Solutions was fined $340 million for fraud and regulatory violations. 3 executives were forced to resign. I should have felt vindicated. Instead, I felt hunted. Within 2 weeks of the contract cancellation, I was unemployed. Eterna didn't fire me. They didn't have to. My contract was simply not renewed. But the real punishment came after. I applied to 17 aerospace firms. 17 rejections. At first, the responses were polite. We've decided to pursue other candidates. Then they became more honest. We don't think you'd be a good cultural fit. Finally, a recruiter I'd worked with for years took me to lunch and told me the truth over a beer he insisted on buying. Jake, you're radioactive, he said, not meeting my eyes. Eterna has connections everywhere. They've put the word out. You're a liability, a whistleblower, someone who puts personal ethics over company loyalty. No one in this industry will touch you. I saved lives, I said, my voice hollow. I know, he said quietly, and that's why you'll never work in aerospace again. I'm sorry. I sat in my apartment that night, the same apartment that had been violated twice, and stared at my engineering degree on the wall. 8 years of school, 6 years of experience, a spotless record. All of it worthless. I was 32 years old, blacklisted from my career, and I had $7,800 in savings. The walls felt like they were closing in. I'd done the right thing, and my reward was professional execution. That's when I remembered. I'd been something before I was an engineer. I'd been a soldier. I'd done 4 years active duty Army right out of high school, Infantry, 2 deployments to Iraq. I'd used my GI Bill for my engineering degree. My discharge had been honorable. I was still in the IRR, Individual Ready Reserve. At 2 a.m., I found myself on the Army recruitment website, staring at the re-enlistment page. 3 days later, I was sitting across from a recruiter, a grizzled staff sergeant named Kowalski, who looked at my file with raised eyebrows. MIT graduate with aerospace engineering degree wants to re-enlist as enlisted? He looked up. Son, with your background, you should be talking to an officer recruiter. I don't want to wait for OCS. I want to ship out as soon as possible. He studied me for a long moment. Running from something or towards something? Does it matter? Not to me. He pulled out the paperwork. With your prior service and technical background, I can get you into a combat engineering unit, specialized explosives, drone countermeasures, forward deployed. You'll ship in 6 weeks. Make it 4. He grinned. Now you sound like a soldier. The night before I was supposed to report to Fort Benning for retraining, I did something I almost never did anymore. I went to a bar. Not a loud one. Not one of those places near the base where fresh recruits went to blow off steam. I found a quiet craft beer place in Arlington, the kind of spot where people went to be alone together. I sat at the far end of the bar, nursing an IPA I didn't really taste, watching ESPN highlights I didn't really see. I was thinking about what I was walking away from. My apartment lease would be broken. My car would go into storage. Everything I owned was packed into 3 duffel bags in a storage unit. I'd lost my career. I'd lost my future. And now I was choosing to step into a war zone. And for the first time since I'd sent that report to the DOD, I wondered if I'd made a catastrophic mistake. You look like a man trying to drink away a decision he's already made. I looked up. She was standing next to the empty stool beside me. Mid-20s, auburn hair pulled back in a loose ponytail, wearing paint-stained jeans and a vintage band t-shirt. She had a sketchbook tucked under her arm and kind eyes. Is it that obvious? I asked. Only to someone who's done it before. She gestured to the stool. Mind if I join you? This is my regular spot, but every other seat has someone on a first date doing that painful small talk thing. I couldn't help but smile. Be my guest. Her name was Sarah Fielding. She was a freelance graphic designer, she said, working mostly with small businesses and startups. She'd moved to D.C. 3 years ago from Portland, chasing a relationship that hadn't worked out, but stayed because she'd fallen in love with the city. She was easy to talk to, disarmingly so. She asked about my day without being pushy. I gave her the sanitized version. I was re-enlisting, shipping out soon, starting over after a career change that hadn't gone the way I had planned. That takes courage, she said, and there was no performative admiration in her voice, just simple respect. Most people stay in situations that make them miserable because starting over is terrifying. Or maybe it's just running away, I said. Maybe. But sometimes running away from the wrong thing is the same as running toward the right thing. She took a sip of her wine. What made you decide to go back? I found myself telling her more than I'd intended. Not the specifics. I still had an NDA, but the broader strokes. I'd worked in defense contracting. I'd found something wrong. I'd reported it. I'd paid the price. So you did the right thing, she said quietly, and you got punished for it. Yeah. And now you're going back to the military because at least there, the enemy is clear. There are rules, honor. You know who's on your side. She looked at me for a long moment, something unreadable in her expression. Then she smiled softly. I think you're a good person, Jake Morrison. The world needs more people willing to stand up even when it costs them everything. It was the first time since the Eterna scandal that someone had said that to me. We talked until the bar closed, about everything and nothing. Her art, my deployments in Iraq, her favorite terrible movies, my secret addiction to cooking shows. It was effortless, natural. When we walked out into the cool October night, she turned to me. I know you're leaving soon, but would you want to get coffee before you go? I'd like to see you again. I should have said no. I should have recognized that starting something now was irresponsible. I was about to deploy to a combat zone. She deserved better than that. But I was so tired of being alone. I'd really like that, I said. Coffee turned into dinner. Dinner turned into a late-night walk along the National Mall. That walk turned into 3 more dates in 5 days. On our 4th date, sitting on a bench overlooking the Potomac, she took my hand. I know this is crazy, she said. I know you're leaving. I know this isn't rational, but I haven't felt this way about anyone in maybe ever, and I can't let you leave without telling you that. My throat tightened. Sarah, I'm going to be gone for at least a year, maybe longer. That's not fair to you. I'm not asking for fair, she said, her eyes locked on mine. I'm asking if you feel the same way. I did. God help me, I did. Yes, I whispered. Then don't make me wait a year to figure out if this is real. She squeezed my hand. Marry me, before you go. I know it sounds insane, but life is short and unpredictable, and I don't want to spend the next year wondering what if. My heart was pounding. Every rational part of my brain was screaming that this was too fast, too reckless. But another part, the part that had been shattered by Eterna, the part that desperately needed to believe there was still something good in the world, that part was saying, yes. Are you sure? I asked. I've never been more sure of anything. We got married 3 days later at the Arlington courthouse. She wore a simple white dress she said she'd bought that morning. I wore my Class A uniform. The judge was a retired Army colonel who looked at our ages and my deployment orders and smiled knowingly. Been there, son, he said after the ceremony. My wife and I got married 2 days before I shipped to Desert Storm. That was 32 years ago. You take care of her, and she'll take care of you. I believed him. That night, our wedding night, we stayed in a hotel overlooking the city. We talked until 3 a.m., planning a future that felt impossibly bright. She'd wait for me. She'd write every day. We'd video chat whenever I had access. And when I came home, we'd start our real life together. I'm going to make you so happy, she whispered as we fell asleep. I promise. I believed that too. 14 months in a combat zone changes you. I was assigned to a forward operating base in eastern Afghanistan, working with a combat engineering unit on IED countermeasures and drone reconnaissance. My aerospace background made me valuable. I could troubleshoot technical problems, interface with contractors, and lead missions that required precision. The days were long and hot and dangerous. We lost 2 guys in my unit to an ambush in month 7. Another lost his leg to an IED in month 10. But I had Sarah. Her emails arrived like clockwork every single day, sometimes twice a day. Long, rambling messages about her work, her day, the life she was building for us. She sent care packages, my favorite snacks, books, a framed photo of us on our wedding day. She never complained, never made me feel guilty for being gone.
On our 6th month anniversary, she sent a video message. She was standing in what she said was our new apartment. She'd found a place for us, she said, using her savings and mine. It had big windows and a second bedroom she was turning into an office for me. I want you to have a space when you come home, she said, her eyes bright. A place where you can figure out what comes next. Whatever you want to do, I'm here. I believe in you. I watched that video 100 times. She was my anchor, my reason to stay sharp, stay alive, come home. The guys in my unit noticed. They teased me about being sprung on my wife, but they also envied me. Half of them were nursing Dear John emails or facing divorces they saw coming from 7,000 miles away. You got lucky, Morrison, my squad leader, Sergeant Torres, said one night. Most marriages don't survive deployment, especially rushed ones. But your girl's solid. Don't fuck it up when you get back. I won't, I promised. I meant it. On our 6th-month anniversary, she sent a video message. She was standing in what she said was our new apartment. She'd found a place for us, she said, using her savings and mine. It had big windows and a second bedroom she was turning into an office for me. I want you to have a space when you come home, she said, her eyes bright. A place where you can figure out what comes next. Whatever you want to do, I'm here. I believe in you. I watched that video 100 times. She was my anchor, my reason to stay sharp, stay alive, come home. The guys in my unit noticed. They teased me about being sprung on my wife, but they also envied me. Half of them were nursing Dear John emails or facing divorces they saw coming from 7,000 miles away. You got lucky, Morrison, my squad leader, Sergeant Torres, said one night. Most marriages don't survive deployment, especially rushed ones. But your girl's solid. Don't fuck it up when you get back. I won't, I promised. I meant it. Month 12. The emails started changing. Subtly at first. They were still daily, still affectionate, but shorter, more surface level. When I asked her about her day, she'd give vague answers. When I asked about the apartment, she'd change the subject. I told myself it was nothing. Deployment was hard on everyone. The distance was wearing on her. But then, in month 13, 3 days went by with no email. I sent her a message. Hey, love, haven't heard from you. Everything okay? The response came 6 hours later. So sorry, work's been crazy. I'm fine, miss you, love you. That was it. 10 words. Something cold settled in my chest, but I pushed it away. She was busy. I was being paranoid. The stress of deployment was making me see problems that weren't there. I had 6 weeks left in my tour. 6 weeks until I'd be home. 6 weeks until I could hold her again and remember what peace felt like. I just had to hold on. The C-17 touched down on Joint Base Andrews on a gray March morning. I was still in my combat uniform, my duffel bag slung over my shoulder. Welcome home, Dad banner one of the guys in my unit had given me as a joke, folded in my cargo pocket. I'd texted Sarah from Germany during our layover. Landing in 6 hours. Can't wait to see you. No response. I told myself she was asleep, or her phone was dead, or she was planning a surprise. The taxi dropped me off in front of our apartment building in Silver Spring. It was a nice complex, exactly like she'd described in her emails. Big windows, brick facade, trees lining the parking lot. I stood outside for a moment, my heart pounding, imagining her opening the door, throwing her arms around me, crying those happy tears I'd dreamed about for 14 months. I climbed the stairs to apartment 3B and unlocked the door with the key she'd mailed me. The door swung open. The apartment was empty. Not just empty, stripped. No furniture, no curtains, no dishes in the kitchen, no photos on the walls. The carpet still had vacuum lines, like someone had professionally cleaned it before they left. I stood in the doorway, my duffel bag slipping from my shoulder and hitting the floor with a dull thud. "Sarah?" My voice echoed in the empty space. No answer. I walked through the apartment like I was moving through water. The bedroom, empty. The bathroom, empty. But there was still a faint smell of her shampoo, like a ghost. The second bedroom, the one she said would be my office, completely bare, except for a single folded piece of paper on the floor in the center of the room. I picked it up with shaking hands. Her handwriting was neat, controlled, almost impersonal. "Jake, I'm so sorry. I thought I could do this. The waiting, the fear, the loneliness. I tried, but the distance was too much. Every day you were gone, I felt myself disappearing. I can't be the wife you need. I can't live like this. I know this makes me a coward. I know you deserved better than a note, but I couldn't face you. I couldn't see the disappointment in your eyes. Please don't try to find me. I'm starting over somewhere new. I need you to do the same. I'm so sorry. Sarah." My knees gave out. I slid down the wall and sat on the bare floor, the note fluttering from my hand. She was gone. The woman I'd married. The woman who'd promised to wait. The woman who'd sent me emails every day for 14 months. Gone. And it was my fault. I'd left her alone. I'd chosen duty over her. I'd asked her to be strong for something she never signed up for. I'd driven her away. The guilt was a physical thing, crushing my chest, making it hard to breathe. I sat there on the floor of that empty apartment for 2 hours, maybe more. A decorated combat veteran broken by a piece of paper. But then slowly, my training kicked in. I forced myself to stand. I forced myself to think like a soldier, not a grieving husband. Something about this didn't add up. The totality of it. She hadn't just left, she'd erased herself. No forwarding address left with the leasing office. No note about where she'd gone. And she'd taken everything, not just her things, everything. The furniture, the kitchen supplies, even the custom curtains she'd said her mother made for us. Her mother, who I suddenly realized I'd never met, never even spoken to. I walked back to the bedroom, forcing myself to catalog what was there and what wasn't. My side of the closet, my civilian clothes were still hanging, exactly as I'd left them before deployment. She'd unpacked them and hung them. Why would she do that if she was planning to leave? I checked the bathroom again. My toiletries were arranged on the counter. My razor, my cologne, arranged like she expected me to use them. Then I checked the bedroom closet's overhead shelf. My important documents box was gone. The fireproof lockbox where I kept our passports, social security cards, birth certificates, marriage license, savings bonds, gone. My stomach dropped. This wasn't a woman leaving her husband because she couldn't handle military life. This was something else entirely. I started unpacking my military gear, my movements mechanical, my mind racing. I pulled out my large deployment duffel, the weatherproof one I used for long-term storage, but hadn't actually opened since before I left. As I unzipped the outer compartment, the one I used for maps and admin paperwork, I felt something hard. I pulled it out. A drive. Sleek, black, professional grade. Definitely not mine. My old drive was orange and scratched to hell, kept in my desk at work. This was new, expensive, and it had been placed in my bag. My hands were shaking as I pulled out my laptop, powered it on, and plugged in the drive. For a moment, nothing. Then a single folder appeared on the screen. Operation Homefront. The blood drained from my face. I clicked it open. The folder contained 43 files. The first file was a PDF titled Subject Profile Jacob Morrison. I opened it. It was me. My entire life, documented with clinical precision. Name, Jacob Alexander Morrison. DOB, March 15th, 1989. Education, MIT, Aerospace Engineering, graduated 2011. Employment, Eterna Solutions, 2011-2017. Status, hostile witness/whistleblower. Threat level, high. Psychological profile, high sense of duty, prone to guilt, idealistic, values honor and integrity over pragmatism, likely to accept personal blame for relationship failures, low social support network following blacklisting. I scrolled down, my hands numb. Recommended countermeasure, long-term asset placement, deploy emotional destabilization protocol. Targets isolation and guilt complex, make him vulnerable to romantic manipulation. Recommend insertion of Asset S for marriage scenario. Asset S. Sarah. The next file was titled Asset Profile, Clara Hendricks, alias Sarah Fielding.
Her photo stared back at me. Same face, same auburn hair, but colder, professional. This wasn't a graphic designer. This was an operative. Asset name, Clara Hendricks. Specialization, corporate espionage, long-term infiltration, emotional manipulation, identity theft. Success rate, 94%. Previous operations, 7 successful asset placements, 12 identity extractions, 4.2 million in recovered assets for clients. I was going to be sick. I clicked through the files. Each one was a nail in the coffin of the life I thought I had. File 003, Insertion Timeline. Day 1. Asset S makes contact with target at predetermined location, Logan's Bar, Arlington. Target is emotionally vulnerable following blacklisting. Initial rapport established. Day 3. Second meeting. Asset S presents as ideal romantic partner, creative, non-judgmental, supportive of target's whistleblower actions. Day 7. Asset S proposes accelerated relationship timeline, citing target's imminent deployment. Marriage proposed. Day 10. Marriage completed. Asset S now has legal access to target's financials and identity documents. I had to stop reading. I bent over, dry heaving, but nothing came up. Just bile and horror. She'd targeted me from the very beginning. That night at the bar wasn't chance, it was a mission briefing. Every word she'd said, every touch, every "I love you," it was all scripted. I forced myself to keep reading. File 007, Communication Protocol. Asset S will maintain daily email contact during target's deployment to reinforce emotional attachment and prevent suspicion.
Emails will be emotionally supportive but will contain no verifiable personal details. Minimal video communication to avoid technical inconsistencies.
The emails. God, the emails. I'd read them over and over, clinging to them like a lifeline. They'd been written by a professional liar. File 015, financial extraction. This one had spreadsheets, detailed logs of every dollar in our joint bank account I'd set up and given her access to before I deployed. My savings, my deployment pay, my combat bonuses, all of it systematically transferred to offshore accounts over the course of my deployment. Total extracted, $47,380. Not a fortune, but enough. Enough to ruin me. Enough to ensure that when I came home, I'd be emotionally shattered and financially devastated. File 028, Identity Document Extraction. A checklist. Check. Passport, J. Morrison, Social Security card, birth certificate, marriage license, bank account information, security clearance documents, medical records, credit card information. She'd stolen my entire identity. File 041, Psychological Impact Assessment. This one was written like a medical report. Target will return from deployment expecting marital reunion. Instead, target will find complete abandonment. Note will be crafted to induce maximum guilt, reinforcing target's existing belief that his choices, whistleblowing, re-enlisting, are destructive to his relationships. Expected psychological state, severe emotional distress, self-blame, financial instability, isolation. Target will be unwilling and unable to speak publicly about Eterna Solutions for minimum 2 to 3 years while recovering from personal crisis. Secondary benefit, if target attempts to expose operation, his claims will be dismissed as paranoid delusions of a mentally unstable veteran. This further discredits any future whistleblower testimony. They'd thought of everything.
Operation Completion Report. Date: March 10, 2019. Status: Success. Asset S performance: Exemplary. Target status: Neutralized. Financial recovery: $47,380 transferred to client account. Identity documents: secured and delivered. Psychological impact: maximum achieved. Conclusion: Target Jacob Morrison has been successfully destabilized. Emotional trauma combined with financial ruin and identity theft will prevent any future credible testimony against Eterna Solutions. Subject is no longer considered a threat. Recommend standard monitoring for 12 months, then case closure. Payment status: $150,000 asset S fee plus $47,380 recovered assets equal complete. Employer: Eterna Solutions, LLC. I sat there staring at the screen, my entire body numb. They'd paid her $150,000 to destroy me. Our entire marriage, the whirlwind romance, the wedding, the emails, the promises, it was a $150,000 contract. I was her job, and she'd done it perfectly.
For a long time, I just sat there in that empty apartment, the laptop screen glowing in the darkness. The grief was physical, a crushing weight on my chest. I'd loved her. I'd believed in her. I'd carried her memory through firefights and mortar attacks. I dreamed about coming home to her. And it was all a lie. But then, slowly, the grief began to crystallize into something else. something cold, something focused. Rage. They thought they'd broken me. They thought I'd collapse into myself, too shattered to fight back. They'd forgotten one thing. I was a soldier, and soldiers don't break. They adapt. They overcome. They win. I pulled out my phone and dialed a number I'd memorized 14 months ago. Sergeant Torres, the voice on the other end answered. Sarge, it's Morrison. I need to talk to the CO, and I need to talk to Jag. It's urgent. Morrison? You just got back. What? They didn't just blacklist me. They came after me, and I have proof. There was a pause. I'll make the calls. Don't touch anything. I'll be there in 20 minutes. I hung up and looked at the flash drive still plugged into my laptop.
They'd made one mistake. One critical, fatal mistake. They'd left me a weapon, and I was about to use it. The next 72 hours moved with military precision. Sergeant Torres arrived with our CO, Lieutenant Colonel Davis, and a JAG attorney named Captain Reeves. I showed them everything: the empty apartment, the note, the flash drive. Captain Reeves's face went pale as she clicked through the files. This is... Jesus Christ, Morrison. This is conspiracy, fraud, identity theft, and retaliation against a federal witness. This is federal. I know, I said. We need to bring in NCIS and the FBI. This isn't just about you anymore. They targeted a serving soldier during deployment. That's a national security issue. Within 12 hours, I was sitting in a conference room at Fort Meade with 2 NCIS agents, an FBI special agent named Chen, and a DoD Office of Inspector General investigator. I walked them through everything: my time at Eterna, the whistleblower report, the blacklisting, meeting Sarah, the marriage, the deployment, coming home to nothing. Agent Chen was quiet for a long time after I finished. Then he said, "Do you understand what you're handing us?" "A case," I said. "More than that, you're handing us a prosecutable conspiracy by a major defense contractor to obstruct justice and retaliate against a witness, with documentation. This is a gift, Mr. Morrison." "Good, because I want them buried." The investigation moved fast. The flash drive was a digital fingerprint. The FBI's cyber crimes unit traced the offshore accounts where my money had been transferred. They followed the trail back to shell companies. Those shell companies led to Eterna Solutions' hidden accounts. They found Clara Hendricks, her real name. She had a history. 7 previous asset placements over 9 years. Corporate espionage, honey traps, identity extractions. She was good at what she did, but she'd gotten cocky. The FBI tracked her to a resort in the Cayman Islands, living under one of her aliases, spending my money. When they arrested her at the airport trying to board a flight to Singapore, she didn't even resist. She was a professional. She knew when the operation was over. But the real targets were bigger. Armed with Clara's testimony, she flipped within 48 hours when offered a plea deal. The FBI served warrants on Eterna Solutions. They found everything: emails between executives ordering the Morrison neutralization, financial records showing the $150,000 payment to Clara, documented proof of a corporate policy of aggressive whistleblower management. And they found something else. I wasn't the first. Over the past 6 years, Eterna had used similar tactics against 3 other whistleblowers: asset placements, financial ruin, identity theft, psychological destruction. One of those whistleblowers had committed suicide 2 years ago. When the FBI showed me his file, a mid-level quality control engineer named David Park, who'd reported safety violations and then inexplicably spiraled into depression and bankruptcy before taking his own life, I had to leave the room. That could have been me. That was supposed to be me. 6 months after I plugged in that flash drive, the indictments came down. Marcus Webb, VP of Defense Systems. Conspiracy, fraud, witness retaliation, obstruction of justice. Richard Castellano, my former supervisor. Conspiracy, fraud. The unnamed man from that conference room, turned out his name was Vincent Cross, Eterna's Director of Strategic Risk Management, which was corporate speak for fixer. Conspiracy, fraud, racketeering, accessory to identity theft. The CEO of Eterna Solutions, Jonathan Kern, RICO charges, conspiracy, wire fraud, obstruction of justice. And Clara Hendricks, identity theft, wire fraud, conspiracy, computer fraud. The trial lasted 8 weeks. I testified for 3 days. I sat on that stand and walked the jury through every detail. Meeting Sarah, falling in love, deploying, coming home to nothing, finding the flash drive. The defense tried to paint me as vindictive, as someone with a grudge against Eterna who was making up a conspiracy theory. Then, the prosecution played a video. It was internal Eterna security footage from a meeting room Marcus Webb and Vincent Cross recorded without their knowledge by Eterna's own surveillance system discussing the Morrison problem. We need him discredited, not just unemployable, broken, so if he ever tries to come back at us, no one will believe him. Asset deployment? Asked Cross. Already in motion. Sarah Fielding. She makes contact in 3 days. The jury deliberated for 6 hours. Guilty. On all counts. All defendants. Marcus Webb got 18 years. Richard Castellano got 12 years. Vincent Cross got 22 years. Jonathan Kern got 25 years and was personally fined $15 million. And Clara Hendricks took a plea deal. 8 years, eligible for parole in 5. In exchange, she testified against everyone. I sat in the courtroom when they read the sentences. I didn't feel triumph. I didn't feel vindicated. I just felt tired. 2 years later, I'm still in the Army. I was promoted to warrant officer and now work in the Defense Acquisition Office. My job is to vet defense contractors, review their compliance protocols, and look for the kinds of vulnerabilities that let companies like Eterna flourish. I'm good at it. I know what to look for now. I know how corruption hides in plain sight. The Army helped me recover my identity and my finances. I got my money back with interest. I got new identity documents. I got a formal apology from the DoD for failing to protect me the first time I reported Eterna's violations. I moved to a small apartment in Alexandria. I don't keep much, just what I need. I've learned that anything you love can be weaponized against you. I got a letter 6 months ago. It was from Clara Hendricks, from prison. I almost threw it away without opening it, but something made me read it. Jake, I don't expect forgiveness. I don't deserve it. But I need you to know something. What I did to you keeps me awake at night. Not because I got caught, because you were a good person, and I destroyed something real. You asked me once in one of those emails I sent while you were deployed, what made me happy. I wrote some bullshit about art and travel, but the truth is, I didn't know. I'd spent so long being other people, playing roles, that I'd forgotten who I actually was. I'm learning now. In here, with nothing but time and silence, I'm learning who Clara Hendricks actually is, and she's not someone I'm proud of. You did nothing wrong. You reported corruption. You served your country. You tried to love someone, and I was hired to punish you for all of it. I can't give you back what I took, but I want you to know that you won. Not just the case. You won because you're still the person you were before I walked into your life. Still honest. Still brave. Still believing that doing the right thing matters. I hope someday you find someone who deserves you. Someone real. I'm sorry. Clara.
I read that letter 3 times. Then I put it in a drawer and never looked at it again. People ask me sometimes if I regret it. Reporting Eterna the first time, re-enlisting, marrying Sarah, Clara, whoever she was. The answer's complicated. I regret the pain. I regret the time I lost. I regret that I fell in love with a ghost and came home to an empty apartment. But I don't regret standing up. Because here's what I learned. They wanted me silent. They wanted me broken. They wanted me to be a cautionary tale. This is what happens when you speak truth to power. Instead, I became something else. I became the reason 3 other whistleblowers came forward after my trial made headlines. I became the reason the DoD implemented new protections for internal reporters. I became the reason Congress passed the Defense Contractor Accountability Act of 2021, which makes retaliation against whistleblowers a federal crime with mandatory minimum sentences. I became the reason Eterna Solutions no longer exists. The company collapsed under the weight of lawsuits, lost contracts, and criminal judgments. Their assets were liquidated. Their name became synonymous with corporate corruption. And I became living proof that you can survive being weaponized against yourself. I don't date anymore. Not because I'm afraid, but because I understand now that trust is something you earn through years, not weeks. And I'm not ready to give that to anyone yet. Maybe someday. For now, I have my work. I have my unit. I have a purpose. I live with silence now. But it's not the crushing silence of that empty apartment. It's not the hollow echo of betrayal. It's the silence of peace. The silence of knowing that when they came for me with everything they had, money, manipulation, malice, I didn't break. I fought back. And I won. They tried to bury me with a lie. They forgot one thing. You never leave a soldier a weapon and expect him not to use it. The flash drive was their weapon of destruction. It became my weapon of justice. And as long as there are people willing to fight back against corruption, against manipulation, against the powerful who think they can crush anyone who challenges them, as long as there are people who might find the courage to speak up because someone else did it first, then what they did to me wasn't just survival. It was victory. My name is Jake Morrison.
I came home a war hero to find my wife was an employee and I was her target. But I'm still standing. And I'm still fighting. And I'm not done yet.
Neither are you. Hit subscribe, because the next story I'm telling could be the one that saves someone you love. Don't let them fight alone.